はい、皆さんこんにちは。
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for gathering here amid your busy schedule, and those on the live, listening to live broadcast. Thank you very much. This is the 9th day of Pacific Island Nation Week. We have the second Pacific Islands Young Professionals Forum for Envisioning the Future as a special event. Let me explain about what we have experienced so far. Since 2008 to 2014, Sasakawa Peace Foundation and the students studying here, coming from Pacific Island countries, are organizing the foreign student, international student conferences. It has been suspended for a while, but last year, Pacific Island countries, those students, when go back to their each home, they will become a professionals and practitioners. So we expected them, the students, to participate as young practitioners, young professionals. That's how we resumed this conference as a Young Professionals Forum. This time, actually last week, we had various discussions on various themes, and but in this forum, we would like to have perspectives, the views of young professionals, have even deeper discussions, so that we in Japan can understand and learn from them about Pacific Islands. Today, we are in the position to learn from young professionals from Pacific Islands. Moderator Malini-san, thank you for moderating the session.
Thank you, Hide-san. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's our pleasure to have all of our students who are doing research in Pacific Island countries here today with us. We'll have an open session where they'll be presenting their work in progress, or some that has already finished their research in the Pacific Island countries as well. And we'll have a lot of discussion. We want to open the floor as well for Talanoa session, as we call in Fiji. So part of the objective of this forum is to create a vision of the future of the Pacific Island countries with the young practitioners, students from the Pacific Island countries, to share with the Japanese people the challenges they face in the field and in their real life through their research as well. Secondly is to strengthen the bond between the people of Japan and Pacific Island countries for the future generations by building a forum for discussion among the young practitioners that we'll be doing today as well. Therefore, without further ado, today's session will include presentations and discussions, more like a think tank among these upcoming researchers and practitioners on issues vital to the Pacific Island countries, such as disaster management, health, water, health and sanitation, foreign policy engagement, social development, civil society organizations, good governance, and with concluding sessions on the importance of research and publication as well. So we will have 3 sessions. First sessions will include disaster management, health. The second session will include social and development and good governance and foreign policy, engagement in the Pacific Island countries, and last, we will have an open session on a talk on research and publications. So without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Semula from Tonga, who will be the moderator for the first session for the health and disaster. Thank you.
Thank you. I will be your moderator for this first session, and I would like to introduce our speakers for this session. Our first speaker is Dr. Hola from Tonga. Our second speaker is Ms. Naya from Fiji, and our third speaker is Mr. Nakata from Japan. Without further ado, I would like to open the floor for the speakers. Thank you.
Konnichiwa, and good afternoon, and welcome to my presentation. My name is Wanahola Fuka from Tonga, and I'm here to present my thesis. And I recently graduated from St. Luke's International University here in Tokyo with the Masters of Public Health. And just acknowledging my supervisor was Professor Kohei Onosaki and the Ministry of Health, Tonga. This is just a brief outline of my presentation, and my topic is about implementation bottlenecks of maternal health care at the Viola Hospital, which is the National Referral Hospital back in my home country. Right. So as a brief background, maternal mortality remains unacceptably high and a significant public health concern globally. Despite a 34% reduction, the maternal mortality ratio in 2020 stood at 223 maternal deaths per 100,000 live births. WHO reported an estimated 800 daily deaths, means one death every 2 minutes. And 95% of these occurred in low and middle income countries like Tonga. And 75% occurred during the peripartum period, which is largely preventable. So targeted interventions are mostly effective in reducing maternal deaths during this critical period. The SDG target is to reduce maternal mortality to less than 70 deaths per 100,000 live births by 2030. And in order to achieve this goal, maternal healthcare evidence-based strategies are widely adopted and health systems strengthened. Despite effective interventions, to improve maternal health, the gap between knowledge and implementation has increased, especially in low-resource settings through policy, program planning, and practices. However, knowledge implementation is crucial for provision of quality health care by bridging this gap to prevent about 113,000 maternal deaths annually. Lack of knowledge application can lead to increased preventable deaths, health system burden, and increased patient cost, and detrimental to families and the society. So what is the problem? UNFPA reported an estimate for Tonga. There is a significant increase in maternal deaths from 37.1 in 2000 to 126 deaths per 100,000 live births in 2020. Tonga's healthcare access and quality index was reported to be 45.9 in 2019, despite a well-structured decentralized healthcare system and a high density of health workers of 3.54 per 1,000 population, exceeding the WHO recommended minimum of 2.3. And 98% of births are attended to by skilled birth health personnel. Deaths of women are tragic for families and communities, and this reflects the current health status of women and the country's healthcare system. The issue is significant as one maternal death results in approximately 40 complications and over 160 postpartum morbidities and disabilities. Additionally, it shows a marked decline in children's survival, which affects the economic growth and productivity, particularly in middle-income nations where data availability may understate this burden. Therefore, the unusual spike of maternal deaths in Tonga indicate a gap in service delivery and maternal outcomes urgently needs investigation. Comparing to other Pacific countries, Tonga is the second highest, just behind Papua New Guinea. And this highlights the need for this study to identify the associated factors that contribute to high maternal mortality in order to assist policymakers in Tonga to develop a tailored plan for improved maternal health care. So the aim of this study was to identify the implementation bottlenecks to provision of quality maternal health care at the Viola Hospital, and by achieving 3 objectives: to document the zero trends of deaths in Tonga for 2011 to 2022, and to assess the evidence practice gap among the health workers, and to investigate how healthcare professionals view the standard of care and the prerequisites for successful implementation in the perinatal period and within the healthcare system. So the methodology, the setting was at the Viola Hospital back in Tonga, with the total population of about 106,000, and 70% residing in the main island where Viola Hospital is located. This facility caters for about 85 and 90% of all births in the country, and the site for all maternal deaths reported. So the design was a mixed method, sequential explanatory, provided better understanding and insights of the phenomenon of interest, and allowing for more robust analysis. Of course, ethics approval was granted from the St. Luke's International University and the Viola Hospital. Just a brief on the data collection and analysis. The quantitative data collection consists of 2 phases, was the review of the annual health reports for maternal deaths and survey of the health workers to assess the knowledge and practice gap. And the second phase was the qualitative process, involves semi-structured interviews of 20 key informants from the administrative office via purpose sampling, and using a questionnaire based on WHO 6 health system framework building blocks and the consolidated framework for implementation research. And Stata and NVivo 14 software were used for analysis. Okay, so we're done for results and discussions. The bar graph shows a zero trend for maternal deaths in Tonga from 2011 to 2022. It has been relatively stable from 2011 to 2021, with no deaths in 2011, 2018 to 2019. However, a rapid increase seen in 2022 with 274 maternal deaths per 100,000 live births. The second result shows a knowledge and practice gap among midwives and doctors in the National Hospital. And the survey assessed the assessed the gap, the knowledge and the practice gap, based on the WHO 50 recommendations for intrapartum care for a positive childbirth experience, was noted to be statistically significant, and this strongly recommend the workers needed to be trained and revise their performance and competencies strategies. The brief profile on the demographic of the participants, and it reviews the aging workforce with about 50% over 50 years of age, female dominance of about 85%, and just about over 55% just had basic education, 45% were new to the workforce, and majority were trained as skilled birth attendants, and just with 45% had some leadership training. And this was the coding and analysis of the qualitative data, consists of 4 themes, 15 constructs, and 12 sub-constructs. The first theme described the characteristics of the interventions, which are the guidelines shows there's a lack of complete evidence-based guidelines, as shown by the word cloud, and only about 53% of midwives comply with the existing guidelines. And the barriers to usage was the outdated evidence, inaccessibility, and some lack of knowledge. and negative attitude to comply with unsafe practice due to lack of supervision and just increase of workload. The participants agreed that in order to guarantee staff competency in implementing recommendations and to enable regular audits and feedback for service improvement, a complete guideline, regular in-service training, and improved continuing medical education were essential. This table shows the 6 pillars of the health systems with their challenges and evidence from participants. Leadership and governance. In Tonga, there's a lack of leadership and poor governance in the health system and poses a serious problem with no current national sexual and reproductive health strategy. The National Integrated Sexual and Reproductive Health Strategy Plan was as of 2018 is inadequate, and majority of the participants were unaware of the maternal health policies, protocols, and recommendations. There is no national steering group for maternal health that is operational, and we participants felt that it was imperative to revive this committee and to develop a robust monitoring and evaluation framework in order to address maternal health challenges and contextualized solutions for better outcomes. And collaboration with developing partners and implementing arms are crucial to execution of action plans. Human resource concerns were identified as a major bottleneck. With a shortage of physicians and midwives, many healthcare workers depart because of low pay and lack of incentives, weak capacity building strategies, and there were lack of understanding of ongoing professional development programs for skill enhancements, and no accreditation system and no regulatory framework. The existing procedures for managing healthcare workers' performance and reducing inefficiency are ineffective and should be enforced. The performance management system is the sole financial tool for employee motivation and retention. According to a survey, about 80% of health workers are not satisfied with the current PMS. Therefore, the workers agreed that the performance-based evaluation are crucial for rewards, but many believe that the current tool is insufficient, transparent, and unsuitable to assess due to complexity and the nature of health professional jobs. Addressing this problem is critical to increase motivation and retention. Low motivation and poor morale and dissatisfied health workers in Tonga sector led to poor performances and low quality of services. Despite Tonga's strong health indicators, key informants consent that this is a chronic issue that requires immediate intervention to stop vital and experienced health professionals from leaving the country. With one of the lowest paid workforces in the region, Tonga should provide a competitive benefits package for healthcare workers, especially specialists. Due to the high cost of living, specialists are being driven to run private clinics in order to supplement their income. And this takes them away from their primary responsibilities of delivering highest quality of medical treatment that may result in less than ideal patient care in public hospital. The participants proposed that the government must quickly address worker motivation and working conditions and revisions of performance-based management system and enhance compensation packages in order to retain and motivate our workforce for better income, for better outcome. The last bottleneck that was identified was the workplace culture, and which contributes to productivity, including unclear roles and inadequate supervision, and causing poor performances. And communication and networking was a huge challenge, with 50% of participants feeling uncomfortable with their leaders due to fear and negative attitudes and barriers to effective communication, a strong blame culture, and a lack of teamwork. The implementation of maternal health policies and protocols is unfavorable, and readiness to implement is inadequate due to lack of leadership commitment. Hence, there is no quality improvement in patient safety plans and ineffective in-service training. Leadership training is crucial, and establishing quality improvement teams at department level is crucial to foster safer working environment. Exploring individual characteristics, 70% believe existing guidelines are effective and 100% confident in their ability to implement if they receive the correct training. Tonga, as of now, lacks implementation and execution plans, and participants feel that their voices are not heard. Ineffective evaluation and feedback and debriefing mechanisms affects their mental well-being, leading to low motivation, poor performances, affecting the quality of care. So to conclude, the study found a significant increase in Tonga's maternal mortality ratio in 2022 of 174 deaths per 100,000 live births. This raises a concern for Tonga since maternal deaths not only reflect the women's health status quo, but also affects their children's growth and survival, and will negatively impact the socioeconomic development of the country. Furthermore, it reveals a significant knowledge gap among health workers. The studies have identified the bottlenecks, and the health system has significant constraints in governance and leadership, health workforce and service delivery. Critical bottlenecks include toxic working environment, lack of leadership, high job dissatisfaction. This contributes to suboptimal care, resulting in significant maternal morbidity and mortality. This is a root cause analysis framework, identifies the bottlenecks and the factors leading to poor quality of care, which is the performance measured, resulting in high maternal deaths, which is the health outcome. Recommendations aim to improve care quality and to reduce mortality by adjusting these control knobs as per the recommendations, and design a transparent and accountable mechanism or a diagnostic pathways to effectively monitor, evaluate, and provide corrective measures. And these are some of the recommendations that were identified: is a partial health reform specific to maternal health care and strengthening of the health system, and encouraging future research for informed decision-making. Brief limitations to the study as predicted, and thank you very much for your time and your patience and your attention. Malo apito.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hola. I would like to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Naya from Fiji. Thank you.
Good afternoon once again, and Bulavinaka. My name is Malini Nair, and I'm currently a PhD student at Tsunami Asia Pacific University in Oita, Japan. Today I'm going to present on my recent publication that was published just last month as part of my research in progress. So the topic for my publication is on assessing the role of sustainable competencies in enhancing psychological facility effectiveness for the disaster responders in Fiji. So basically it's in the context of Fiji. So just a brief overview of the study, and then I'll briefly talk about the methodology and data collection, a bit of focus on results and analysis, and with conclusion and implication of the studies. So the overview of the research, basically the introduction to the research is basically on psychological phase state. A lot of times we have many disasters happening in or due to climate change or natural disasters as well. A lot of time we talk only of more physical health than mental health. And since the lack of resources that we have in our country, or basically if we talk about Pacific Island countries, we do not have enough specialized people who can provide mental health and psychosocial support. So this research is basically focused on lay person from the non-medical perspective and how to enhance psychological phase state interventions through disaster responders, or those people that are responding to disasters, or even building building community resilience as well. So psychological first aid is the cornerstone of mental health support following any disasters that has been recognized as well. With the rise of global crisis, the need for effective PFA interventions has become also evident as well. So the study focus was on Fiji's disaster responders, examining the impact of sustainability competencies on the PFA effectiveness. So the objective of the research is to basically examine the correlation between the sustainability competencies and the psychological first aid principles within the Fiji disaster responders context. And the research aimed to provide an insight into the competencies' role in enhancing PFA interventions. So more like this is incorporating education side of it, how we can make learning psychological first aid more effective by incorporating the sustainability competencies. So what are these competencies? These competencies are derived from the Sustainable Development Goal on quality education, and it involves 7 key competencies of sustainabilities that are integrated problem solving, strategic systems thinking, self-awareness, normative, collaboration, and anticipatory and critical thinking. So basically trying to embed this kind of these competencies into the psychological first aid curriculum for the disaster responders. So to identify whether there was a need for this, the survey was conducted, and if you can see, as part of the methodology, the red dot indicates from whole of Fiji that the responders took part in the survey on. So theoretical framework, and based on the survey design, a comprehensive review was established from the theoretical framework linking psychological first aid principles with the sustainable competencies. I will not go into detail because it's a bit cut long, but you can always study on that. So again, the resources that was utilized for what was for UNESCO, International Agency for Standing Community, and WHO to define the competencies and the expected learning outcomes. And the survey execution included cross-section survey was conducted among Fiji disasters responders using a stratified random sampling to ensure a diverse and representative sample as well. And the survey assessed the importance of sustainable competencies in delivering effective PFA. So basically, the total number of responders that took part was 73, which of 49 were PFA trained before, and 15 were non-PFA trained before. And there was a balance of gender distribution with mostly females taking part in the survey. And also the responses were analyzed based on age, experience, and training in psychological first aid. And if you look on the other side, competency evaluation, it looked at younger and less experienced responders rated sustainable competencies as very important, indicating an early career recognition of their significance. And more experienced responders showed a nuisance evaluation, reflecting a perspective shaped by practical experience. So basically, the older, the more that had more experience in disaster response could have learned through the experience, and they did not recognize most of these competencies as essential in their. So this is basically the graph showing the ones with PFA trained and without PFA trained, and basically looking at what they think about these competencies as part of the disaster responders jobs. And it was also using the person correlation for disaster response. It also shows that it also measured the age and the years of experience. And as I mentioned earlier on, the correlation between age, experience, and evaluation of professional competencies among disaster responders indicates that disaster responders with extensive experience and PFA training rated competencies as important, reflecting a perspective shaped by a long-term career development and practical experience. Equally, younger and early career respondents emphasize competencies as very important, indicating an initial recognition of the significance, the appraisal patterns across the different age groups, especially of competency. The appraisal patterns across different age groups, especially among those with PFA training, suggest a tendency to moderate assessments of competency in importance with the increasing experience. So the statistical analysis, including mean, median, standard deviation, and variance, provide a detailed understanding of the data, underscoring competencies like self-awareness in both data sets and integrated problem solving and collaboration with psychological PFA trained responders as the key effective of the PFA intervention. Now to conclude, so the study underlines the critical need to integrate sustainability competencies into the psychological first aid curriculum in Fiji's unique social cultural context. This interplays between age, experience, and competency assessment stresses the diverse factors influencing perception in disaster response field beyond experience alone. Therefore, the results show that sustainable competencies are the ultimate to the effectiveness of psychological first aid measurement and intervention. And this research laid the foundation for further studies to develop validated tools for assessing sustainable competencies in different cultural contexts, thereby improving the effectiveness of psychological first aid in disaster management, and also integrating these competencies in psychological first aid training could significantly strengthen psychological first aid intervention and also provide a competency-based evaluation as well. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nair. I would like to invite Mr. Nakata for the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for introducing me. Good afternoon. I'm Koki Nakata from the University of Tokyo. So in my PhD course, I research about Tsunami history in Tonga. So in this, So in this presentation, I will talk about first a brief review of the previous Tsunami studies in Tonga and the South Pacific region, and then I will talk about the initial results survey, which we did in last November. So the Tonga is located, as you know, Tonga is located in the South Pacific area, and around Tonga there is Tonga Kermatic Trench and also many submarine volcanoes. So Tonga is at high risk from the large tsunamis generated by these trenches or submarine volcanoes. Indeed, in 2022, Hunga Tonga Hapai volcano erupted and generated the large tsunami with maximum height of 20 meters in Tonga. So then, to assess the future tsunami risk in Tonga, we need to know the past tsunami histories, because we need to know the recurrence interval, tsunamis, and possible size of tsunami. So to reveal, so the revealing of tsunami history is very important for disaster prevention planning. So then, how can we know the past tsunami history? So the tsunami deposit is telling us. So tsunami deposit is the deposit layer is formed by the tsunamis. So tsunamis include not only water but also beach sand and some marine life like shell or coral, and then the tsunami bring to the ground and deposit and make some deposit layer. This is a tsunami deposit. So this is an example of, the figure shows the example of the tsunami deposit. So the white layer is the tsunami deposit, which is formed by the past tsunami event. So that we can know the existence of past tsunamis by finding a tsunami deposit under the ground. And we can know the age of tsunamis by the radiocarbon dating for the coral or shells are included in this tsunami deposits. So the tsunami deposit survey is very useful to know the past tsunami history. So in South Pacific area, many paleo tsunami studies were carried out on several islands, and researchers found 50th century tsunami deposit in many islands. So some researchers say that the very large tsunami events happened in the 50th century, and the tsunami affected the wide area in the South Pacific. And also, researchers found that 2,000 years ago, tsunami deposits in some island, and some researchers also say that large tsunami event happened 2,000 years ago. So however, in Tonga, paleo tsunami study is very limited. Only 2 studies were carried out. The first one is the Florich et al. 2009. They reported the presence of tsunami borders. Tsunami border is the border which transported by the tsunami. So this photo shows the example of the tsunami border in Tongatapu Island. And this is called Maui Rock, and this is the largest one in Tonga. And recently, Rabin et al. 2021 reported the 50th century tsunami deposits below these tsunami borders. However, it is not well known tsunamis before the 50th century in Tonga. So the aim of this study is revealing the full tsunami history in the last 2,000 or 3,000 years in Tonga. So to reveal the past tsunami history in Tonga, we carried out field survey on the Tongatapu Island, which is a main island in Tonga. So we surveyed mainly in the Kanokpolo area, which is the northwest side of Tongatapu Island. And in this area, we found tsunami borders, as shown in this figure. The height of border is about 5 meters, and the border is about 1,000 tons. And the height of the elevation is about 10 meters. So then, and the location of the border showed by these yellow pins. And in this survey, we dug the trench just below this border to try to find some tsunami deposits. And we also we measured the radiocarbon data of 18 samples collected in this survey to estimate the age of past tsunamis. So this is a trench which we made in last survey. And this is the tsunami border, and we dug the trench below this border. So this is the middle figure photograph shows one side of wall of a trench, and the right figure shows a columnar section of the trench. So the top of the layer is composed of sand and coral or shell fragment and some foraminifera. And below layer is the sound layer, and the sound layer is the matrix of this layer is also a soil, but this layer includes many coral or shell fragments as shown in this left figure. And then the fourth layer is also soil, and the fifth layer is the also soil, but the color is black, and this layer also includes some coral and shell fragments. And the sixth layer is composed of sandy silt, and in this layer we can find two sand lanes, including coral and shell fragments. And the bottom layer is also composed of sand and coral shell fragment, and we show the example of the shells in the left figures. And this layer is partially directly covered by the ash layers. So in this trench, we found about 6 layers, including coral or shell fragments. The coral and the shell is a marine life, so to deposit them onto the ground, the large tsunami event is needed, such as tsunami. So we think these 6 layers, including coral and shell fragments, are possible tsunami deposits. So next, I will explain about event 1 to 6 layers in detail. So event 1 layer is on the ground surface, and we interpreted as this layer as the 2022 Funga Tonga Hapai tsunami deposits, because this layer is on the ground surface, so this event layer should be correspond to the latest tsunami event. And we can confirm that the 2022 Funga Tonga Hapai tsunami transported sound around this survey site from the satellite images. So light figure is the satellite images around the survey site, and the yellow pin shows the survey site. And after 2022 Funga Tonga Hapai tsunami, you can see some tsunami is scattered around the survey site. However, before the 2022, you cannot see these sand white area. So the tsunami, Funga Tonga Hapai tsunami, transported some sand around this survey site. And for the event 2, the light figure light photograph show the overall view of the trench. And event 2 layer is continued to just below this tsunami borders. So we think the event 2 layer and this tsunami border is transported by the same tsunami event. So in this case, the event 2 might have been a big tsunami event enough to transport this large border, which is about 1,000 tons. This is a very big one. And for the event 6, layer 6, this layer is directly covered by the Tefla layer. So we think this event will have been associated with a submarine volcanic tsunami like Funga Tonga Hapai tsunami. So this is a close-up photograph of the around event 6, and the event 6 layer composed including many gravel, coral and shell gravel, and this layer is directly covered by Tefla layer, as you can as shown in this figure. So then we also measure the radiocarbon date for the coral and shell in the event layer 2 and 6. The light figure shows the results of the radiocarbon dating for event 2 and event 6 respectively. So this figure shows the date results for each samples, and horizontal axis show how old from the present. So the tsunami deposit includes coral or shells, which which already died before the tsunami. So some date of samples is older than the actual tsunami age, but the latest one is the closest to the actual tsunami age. So from this result, event 2 is happened around 250 years ago, and event 6 it happened in around 2,000 years ago. So this is a summary of my presentation. And we found 6 possible tsunami deposits in the Kanok area on the Tongatapu Island. And radiocarbon dating of those sediments suggests that event layer 2 and 6 were deposited about 250 and 2,000 years ago, respectively. And this is the first report of potential tsunami deposit older than the 50th century in Tonga. And for the event 2, this event might have been a big tsunami event, enough to transport a large tsunami border. And for the event 6, this event may well have been associated with submarine volcanic tsunamis. And before I finish my presentation, I will talk about the implication for disaster prevention from these results. So we found the 6 events in the last 2,000 years in Tonga. So this means that Tonga is struck by tsunamis repeatedly with several hundred years recurrence interval. So as expected, the tsunami disaster prevention is very important for the Tonga. So there is mainly two ways there's mainly two ways for the disaster prevention. First is the structure measures such as constructing the seawall or a breakwater, and the second one is the non-structural measures such as evacuation training, education, and the preservation of coral reef, blah blah. However, the first one is needs much cost. So I think we should focus on the second one, non-structural measures. And especially for the Tongatapu Island, I think the preservation of the coral reef is very important because a coral reef can attenuate the tsunami energy if the coral reef have enough width. And the bottom figure shows the satellite image of Tongatapu Island. And there is a well-developed coral reef north of the Tongatapu Island. And main city in Tongatapu Island called Nuku'alofa is located in the north coast area. So I think this north well-developed coral reef is a natural seawall or breakwater for the Nuku'alofa city. So I think especially for the Tongatapu Island, this preservation of the coral reef is very important. So this is all for my presentation. Thank you for listening, and Malo.
Thank you, Mr. Nakata, for your presentation. I would like to take this opportunity to open the floor for Talano session and discussion. I would also open the floor for any questions to the presenters. Now, to start off our discussion, I would like to initiate a few discussion topics for the audience and also for the presenters. Starting with the Dr. Holla's presentation, I think one of the key points that I take from Dr. Holla's presentation is the decentralization of health services and the challenges that small island countries in the Pacific face in decentralization, especially for us in the Pacific. considering our very vast ocean with more than hundreds and hundreds of islands. And decentralization has always been around in the public agenda for so many years now. And to overcome the challenges of our geographical challenges and isolation, decentralization of public services, especially in the health sector, is very important. But I would like to open this point for discussion for Dr. Holla. How does she views our geographical isolation in the Pacific and the significance of proper decentralization of healthcare services in Tonga? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Well, back home, the healthcare system is mainly public and it's free. And the primary health care, which is essentially part of the public health services, the infrastructure has been built in. I think over time, with the health workers, of course. So the prescription for the decentralization of the health system has been there for quite some time now. And over time, there's a transition of services now being centralized because of shifting of health workers and the input or the supply are not able to maintain the demand. So because of the uncertainty and it feels like it's unsafe, so the service is being a little bit centralized. Having said that, there is health system of Tonga is manned by 3 district health hospitals out for the main 3 islands, outer islands, and also governed by 34 maternal child health clinics and 14 health centers. So having said that, then is it enough to provide the quality health services that we expect to? The primary health care, I feel that it's there, but those in the marginalized and the peripheries due to geographical barriers are being deprived of the specialized skills. Then how the question is the public are then financially protected or have the means of transport to have access to the supposedly specialized healthcare services? It is. There are certain levels of competencies that when we send out health professionals, they are required to perform at different levels, and strengthening of the referral system and the call and recall of patients. There's work in progress, but we are also utilizing the technology to provide remote consultations for those that require support and help of our services in the outer islands. But I think from out of this study, it highlights that the weakening of the health systems. And I think it's not only Tonga, it's across the Pacific. These are the challenges that we face, but that we need to come, the decision or recognition that the system is weak, therefore escalate the decision-making to a platform and in collaboration with organizations, for example, WHO and other NGOs to provide the necessities and the prerequisites in order to bridge that gap. And having said that, with a robust M&E framework designed in a way that be able to the input match the output and a transparent mechanism to make sure that we provide the services that our people rightly deserved. And to answer your question, our system is was being decentralized, but due to a lot of factors, have kind of shift towards being centralized. But I think this is an opportunity for us to revisit and relook at the current status quo and see how and identify ways to be better in terms of strengthening the health system and bridging the gaps that have been identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holla. I think just to build on from Dr. Holla's points of discussions, the importance of having an overarching competency framework for public health workers. I think it's the same point of discussion that Ms. Naya had presented in her presentation, the importance of having competencies for disaster responders. I think a good question that would be for Ms. Naya is regarding the standards of an overarching competency framework for disaster workers. Do you believe that all disaster responders should have a minimum standard competency before they are being approved to be deployed into disaster-affected populations? Yeah, that is the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Samson. Indeed, it's a very good question, and a question that requires a lot of attention to detail, especially when you are training people who are responding on the field. And as you know, mostly the disaster responders in the Pacific are people from the community, and they lack basic skills, knowledge, and they require such skills to be implemented as part of their training. And I think in the Pacific, if you look at the overall, and we have discussed about this in the education last week, that we love doing things, very activity-based trainings, case studies, where we think, we want to think, and we want to act on it. So if it's more like a classroom-based kind of training, then it's always difficulty for people to go, when they go on the field and face the real situations, that's where they face the difficulties and they don't know what to do. So the reason why I'm trying to put in these competencies as part of the PFA curriculum, and that's also going to be challenging on how you're going to put in the curriculum, is basically for them to, for example, if you are in a situation where you don't know what to do, because basically disaster responders go in to provide the support as in terms of identifying like what has happened, looking at the building structure or the infrastructure, the damage and everything, but a little focus has been given on the psychological impact of those that have gone through this event, how much they're traumatized, because sometimes there is solutions already in the community, but they're not able to think just because of the impact of the disaster that went through. So if you embed this kind of skills in them, whether they are able to identify, like for example, integrated problem-solving skills. If you teach them how to implement integrated problem-solving skills, that means that they are able to identify a problem and come up with a solution with a very activity-based competencies as well. Again, another one very important that was recognized as part of the survey was self-awareness, which is very much required as a disaster responder as well for their self-care and for their own mental health care as well, because many times they go on the field, they are the first people who see things and they get traumatized themselves. So when they come back, where is that self-care or well-being support for them? So these are those kind of things that's trying to be implemented in the PFA curriculum as well. So yes, it is very important for any responders, I guess, even those who are in the medical field, because they are also responding as a secondary stage of mental health care as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think to your point in the PFA curriculum, I think it's also important for all disaster responders, maybe not just in the medical field, but also in all other fields, especially when they are the first people who arrive in the disaster-affected areas. I mean, for police, for firefighters, search and rescue, for NDMOs, engineers, shelter engineers. Because in recent disaster events, especially I think after Cyclone Winston in 2016, the Pacific Humanitarian Team had tried to develop an overarching competency framework for all disaster responders in the Pacific, that every disaster responder should at least have a minimum skills or requirement to effectively deal with people. I mean, we've come across WASH engineers, WASH engineers who are specialized in developing water systems for disaster-affected populations, but they have no idea how to deal with people and how to deal with people's mental health during disasters. So I think it's around that kind of discussions that I think should be expanding the scope of PFA to all disaster responders.
Thank you. Yeah, just to add on that, so my research is basically more focused on building community psychological resilience, so the very lay person and from the non-medical perspective as well. And I agree with your point. I think in every aspect, those that respond to a disaster, whichever field they come from, has to have a minimum set of competencies. Because if you look at Pacific Island countries, not only in Fiji, we are very multi-diverse in our culture, tradition, which also needs to be taken into account as well when dealing with people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll move on to Mr. Nakata. With the discussions around history of past tsunamis and how important the historical data would be for preventing future disasters, and how do we minimize the impact of tsunamis in the future in Tonga. You did mention structural measures. I would just like to ask if your research included the importance of improving data in Tonga, especially geological data on tsunamis, if we can include it as part of the non-structural measures. Maybe we need to improve our technologies or our data collection, or, as you mentioned, the studies in historical data on tsunamis are very limited in Tonga. So maybe that is an area also that we need to improve, is to increase studies and research to collect historical data of tsunamis.
Thank you for your comment. So as you said, the Tonga history record of tsunami in Tonga is very limited. So we need to research. We need to research the past tsunami deposit, and we need to know the past tsunami history from this tsunami deposit survey. So as in this presentation, I talk about the tsunami deposit survey in this just one site, but this is not enough data. So we need to research the other site in Tongatapu Island, and not only for Tongatapu Island, but also the other island in Tonga, like Niuatoputapu Island or Babao Island, and in last, so that we need to more tsunami deposit survey in Tonga, and So in last week, we just visited the Tonga Island again, and we surveyed the other side, and west side of Tonga and the west side of Tonga Island, and also we found some tsunami deposit in this other side. So I think, but this data is, I think it is still not enough, and I would like to go to again and more tsunami deposits, and if we know the tsunami deposit distribution, we can estimate how these tsunamis happened, like by the submarine volcano or Tonga climatic trench. So. So in my PhD course, I will reveal this full tsunami history and how these past tsunami happened in Tonga. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think having the necessary information on tsunami data would be not only critical for decision making, especially how best do we invest our limited resources in, like you mentioned, structural measures like building seawalls and water breakwater. But where do we need to invest those resources, and in which islands, in which locations there is a potential of future tsunamis? I think that data that you do in your research and the information collected from your research would be important for our decision making, especially where do we need to invest our resources, how to invest our resources. But not only that for decision making purposes, but also for local communities as well. I think informing people of past data on tsunamis would inform them of how best they can prepare themselves for future tsunamis. So I think it's a very important research, and I think, like you mentioned, it is important to expand the scope of that research and obtain more data, not only for Tonga, but for all the Pacific Island countries as well. It's a very critical research in that area. Thank you very much. I would like to open the floor for the audience for any questions you may like to ask the presenters. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful presentations. I have a question for Dr. Holler. Actually, two questions. As you have a lot of experience working in other Pacific Island countries apart from Tonga, and you have spent a fair amount of time in Fiji, you have also worked in Samoa, Tuvalu, to name a few. Do you think the other Pacific Island countries have a similar situation of what you have found in your research study as well? And my second question is, like, there's a lot of challenges that was highlighted in your findings. So when you look at challenges in implementations, which areas do you think you need outside intervention? Like probably you need other agencies to come and support you, and to what percentage it needs to be sorted out within the national governance level? Thank you.
Thank you, Nini. It's a difficult question. With my small experiences in the other parts of the Pacific, I feel it. Each country have their own concerns, and basically just go back and do a basic situational analysis to identify the needs and prioritize those needs based on those respective countries. And then then you need to ask the questions, what is the prescription required or the inputs that are being required to achieve those outcomes, and what are your end results, and of course the mechanisms that should be in place as checkpoints to make sure that we are progressing and providing positive results. In terms of the similarities or the challenges, I feel it's the same. Basically, the health workforce, the leadership and governance, basically is the health system, weakening of the weakened health systems. And I feel that needs to come from within the country and escalate it to a platform whereby engaging the developing partners and the NGOs and identifying how can they contribute to bridging those challenges. Number one. Number two is the we always say that there's no money. I feel there is sufficient money. It's just going the wrong places. And I feel it goes back to the leadership and governance. And I think we do need that support to strengthen the health systems. The surprisingly of my research, and I feel it's the same in the other parts of the Pacific, was the organizational culture. And I feel those are the minor things that are not being recognized as very important and critical, that it's not about money. If your employee is happy and not being, their mental well-being and their families and personal lives are not being compromised, I feel they can do way better given the limited resources and the circumstances in the Pacific. But I think I guess it needs to look outside the box and look within and see what are our priorities in the Pacific, because basically it's the same. It's NCD, and you have a long way to go. But if we could recognize that our health system needs support and we need to do better to foster a safer working environment for our employees, I feel that that will solution. Those will be the solutions to cater for more than 50% of the problems that we are facing in the Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hola. We still have time. Any questions from the audience? No? Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I also had a question for Dr. Hola, but I think maybe I'll direct my question to even out the panel to Mr. Nakata. I'm curious how else the data that you can collect can be leveraged in different use cases, and if there are perhaps instances of this kind of data being used maybe in Japan for certain uses or in other countries that could be beneficial in addition to the anticipated benefit of being able to kind of predict what the history was. For example, looking forward, will you be able to use this data to predict maybe the frequency moving forward as well? I'm curious about this.
So your question means that this South Pacific area research is very also important to the other sites?
Yeah, so whether you can utilize your data about like the history of tsunami specifically in Tonga for other use cases, for example, disaster prevention moving forward, future looking as well.
So, sorry, I can't grasp your question meaning, but so you mean the what do you? Sorry, sorry for one more question. Okay.
No, it's probably my fault. I'm not explaining it clearly. It's not the translation. Yeah, so I guess another way to put it is when you finish your publication and your thesis, who do you hope to share it with in addition to the government and policymakers, and what do you hope they can use it for?
So, okay, thank you very much. And okay. So yeah, this is a good question, and this is a very important point. So this scientific research is scientific research is important for itself, but I think we need to use this data for the political decisions. So but when we use the data for the political decision, we need to communicate with politicians or citizens, and but this is difficult. So I'm the pure scientist, but also the pure scientists need to know how to communicate, communicate with citizens and political makers. So we need to learn how. We need to know how to do scientific communication. So this is very difficult, but I think this is a very important point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our presenters, and thank you to the audience for your time and your attendance. I would like to conclude our sessions, and we would like to move on to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam, for moderating this session. We'll take a 5-minute break before we move to the session 2. Session 2 will be on social development, good governance, and foreign policy engagement in Pacific Island countries. So we'll resume at 14:30. Good afternoon and welcome back. Our next session, session 2, will start now. The discussion topic will be on social development, good governance, foreign policy, engagement in Pacific Island countries. Our moderator today is Mr. Keone Williams from East West Center, Hawaii, and I'll hand it over to him now. Thank you.
Thank you, Malini. My name is Keone Williams. As she mentioned, work at the East West Center. It's my pleasure to introduce our 2 panelists for this session. First, I will begin with Justin Ale, who is a master's student at Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University. Welcome. I also would like to introduce Sam Pohiva, master's student at Rikyo University. Justin will be presenting an assessment of China and U.S. foreign policy engagement in the Pacific region, which is a comparative perspective on power modes and institution modalities. Sam, on the other hand, will be presenting the role of civil society organizations and media in advancing good governance through social accountability. I will hand it over. I'll give the floor to Justin first to provide his presentation.
Sasakawa Peace Foundation, organizing committee for this forum, ladies and gentlemen, and my peer Pacific students, thank you for having me. This is my honor to present to you work in progress master's thesis titled An Assessment of China and U.S. Foreign Policy Engagement in the Pacific Region, Comparative Perspective on Power Modes and Institution Modalities. My presentation will be very brief, and this is the table of content. I will be talking about giving you a brief introduction, a brief literature review, conceptual framework, and research that I've conducted. And based on this conceptual framework, I will also explain the analysis of the data as well as a conclusion and maybe a brief way forward for that. Pacific region is the largest ocean region in the whole world. We got the largest ocean territories, regardless of our small land. The largest ocean that we have also has its advantages as well as disadvantages. The Pacific region is divided into 3 ethnocentric groupings. We call it Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia. The Pacific region consists of 14 independent states, and the ocean, the land, the isolation, all has its own challenges and issues. The isolation has been a huge problem for the Pacific region to realize its potentials. We got deposits of resources, we got our commodities, we got our vast ocean has a lot of marine biodiversity, marine resources and everything, but because of our isolation, as well as the challenges that we face, has been the hindrance to the maximum realization of the potentials that we've been having. And while the successive governments have been trying their best to address these challenges, we are faced with another existential threat to the region where we have this, we are vulnerable to climate change as well as health crisis that is affecting the world. So this has been the struggles that the Pacific region have been facing through. As the governments have been struggling their very best to address these challenges, and given this vast deposit, the strategic location that we have in the midst of the in the region, dividing our position in the ocean, kind of gives the central location where we can unite the Asia from the west and the east, and they give all these factors has been the central issues that causes the geopolitical competition that is going on between the U.S. and China in the region. The U.S. and China have been having the bilateral relationship with the Pacific region since their decolonization in the 1970s. But since then, their engagement in the region have been minimal, and the region with these challenges, they have been struggling to at least govern themselves and provide some necessities that could help them to improve their governance, their systems, and the social services and everything. But because of the factors that have been highlighted already as some sort of influence that they are faced with. And then after the 2010, my research focus is based on the data gathered as of 2010 and onwards. So since the bilateral relationship after the independence from 1970s up to 2010, the relationship that China and US have been having in the region has been minimal. But after the 2010 and onwards, China tried to increase its economic, political, and strategic relations with the Pacific region. So while China was having greater influence in the not influence, but increasing its engagement, political, security, not security, but economic, as well as attempting to engage into strategic relations with the Pacific region as prompted the U.S. to refocus its attention towards its neighbor, the Pacific region that was once neglected for some time. So the U.S. has came up with the pivot of the Asia and trying to rebrand it to make it nice by saying rebalance to increase its focus in the Pacific. So since then, the engagements and the geopolitical competition has been the focus of my research. Okay, why the significance of this research? The significance is that the U.S. and China has been having this bilateral relations since in the past, but they have not been given due consideration to the conditions of the Pacific. And after this 2010 and onwards, why have they increased their attention and so much focus on the Pacific region? And the significance of this is that the decisions of the government, the respective governments of the country, they have to be kept abreast of the intentions, the approaches, the strategies that both governments are engaging in the country, and as well as the interests and the priorities that they are attributing into the course of actions, so that they can make informed decisions so as to keep the balance in their relationship with U.S. as well as China and all other development cooperation partners, because the political standpoint of the Pacific region has been to be friends to all and enemies to none. So this has been the literature. If you talks about, we realize that the countries and governments engaging with another countries, they are trying to pursue the national interests in another countries through the use of foreign policies. And the economic, the societal norms, the political conditions, and the economic systems, whatever that is considered as of the national interests, they would like to, because not all countries have what they have. So they have tried to engage in other countries to pursue their national interests. So I've been dwelling on two key international relations theories, realism and liberalism. And I drew out the tenets from these two theories, the power and institution. So my comparative perspective of the studies is to look at how US and China have been using the different variables of soft power and the institutions in trying to gain their position in the Pacific region. So that's basically it. And as for China, a lot of literatures have been talking about China's increased economic engagements, political engagements, as well as several attempts to engage in strategic relations with countries in the Pacific regions. And a lot of the research have attributed that much of the intentions that China was having was to, because of the large number of countries that we have in the Pacific, 14 independent states, the strategic location as well as the vastness of resource base that we have, as well as the important trade route we have in the region. That's the motivations why China has been trying to get its place in the Pacific, by as well as to address its peripheral issues. South China Sea, the reunification of Taiwan, all this requires some sort of political support at the UN to gain support from the countries in the Pacific. So these are some of the contributing motivations, as well as economic advancement to establish trade routes, to tap into the vast resources that we have in the Pacific, to establish markets. These are some of the possible reasons why China has been increasing its engagement in the Pacific region, as well as the strategic locations that the Pacific has because of its, maybe its long-term dream. And for the U.S., also a lot of literature have been describing U.S. to, as of 2010, U.S. has been increasing its political relations, also increasing its economic assistance to the Pacific by involving different social sector support improvement, as well as engaging in civil society organizations, as well as strengthening its alliance system with like-minded states, including Japan, Australia, New Zealand. All this, the U.S. tried to bring into cooperation and partnership to engage with the Pacific region to pursue the common interests and joint interests. So these have been some of the literatures that have been referring to U.S. engagement in the region. And the possible motivations for such overarching cooperation and partnership by the U.S. Was attributed to have been contain the growing influence of China in the region. Is one of the primary reasons, as well as to promote and protect rules-based international order, seem to be compromised by Chinese approach towards the government in the Pacific region, as well as to protect and promote democratic values and governance principles, because a lot of engagements that China has been doing with the government in the Pacific region, it is seen that some of these values, like transparency, accountability, and all these things have brought into question because of the political decisions and actions that our governments are doing. Some of these are not being so accountable and transparent. So as a countermeasure to all this, U.S. has been trying to improve all these democratic values and governance, as well as to maintain its hegemonic stability. From this literature review, I have realized that most of the past literatures, they have been including their analysis or their perspective inclusive of the Asia-Pacific region, without giving a specific focus on the Pacific region. So that was one of the area that weak point that I realized in these literatures. And the other one was that most literatures, they were issue-specific. They were issue-specific, like talking about security or talking about trade and investments or any other issues of such in a separate manner without giving a very comprehensive engagement about China and U.S. Foreign policy engagement in the region. So when realizing this gap, I tried to, and also I realized that there wasn't any comparative view or perspective on the foreign policy and of U.S. and China in the region. So I realized this gap and structured my research to offer a comparative perspective of foreign policy tools employed and the motivations attached to its strategy. So geopolitical competition intensifies. Comparative study is necessary to offer a balanced perspective to decision and policymakers to undertake a responsible action with respect to relations with China, to U.S., as well as other development partners in the region. So with respect to the theoretical framework as well as literatures that I've went through, this is the conceptual framework that I came up with, and the modality of institutions and the mode of power. So China utilized localized institutions. China utilized localized institutions that were basically structured for China to engage specifically with the Pacific region. And those institutions like China-Pacific Economic Cooperation Development Forum and China-Pacific Island Countries Foreign Ministers Meeting and other sector-specific forum efforts were established. And those localized institutions, China was focused on needs-oriented, trying to provide the need that was faced by the country, and also was closeness, not open to any other outside intentions or to include any other countries, but to be specific with itself and the Pacific. And the flexibility, given the evolving geopolitical challenges, China was China was adopting this flexible approach to make adjustments as and when needed. And for the US utilized these generalized institutions, where it focused on governance, trying to improve the governance mechanisms in the Pacific, as well as being open to other partners like friends of the Blue Pacific, as well as other like-minded states to come together, consolidate their powers, as well as to strengthen their resources to engage in this process to strengthen the alliance system and to protect and promote their said interest. And also US was also rigid in its generalized institutions because it was focused on observing the laws as well as promoting long-term commitments. And for the mode of power, China was using pragmatic power to offer practical benefits through its BRI, aid, and financial assistance, and as well as promoting non-interference by respecting the sovereignty of the Pacific, as well as non-conditionality, giving the Pacific freedom to decide on their own development as per their assessments. As well, but for US was using this ideational power to promote norms and values, democratic norms and values, and to interfere in the areas that US saw that the Pacific countries are vulnerable to influence, as well as conditionality, trying to ensure that all development are structured with, guided by the policy to provide outcomes that were seen lacking in their engagement with another partners. So with this generalized institutions as well as soft power engagements, the Pacific leaders had their own assessments on both China and the US foreign policy engagement in the region. So for China, Pacific leaders held that pragmatic power approach brought immense transformation to the socio-economic landscape of the Pacific Island countries. They seen social and transport infrastructure, respect for sovereignty, and enabling freedom to choose development pathway based on their needs. But the side effects of that it has fueled corruption, as well as the countries are being trapped into debt that can take them some time, as well as transparency and accountability. And for localized institutions, they enhanced cooperation and partnership on multi-sectoral developments to foster strategic cooperation, but then remain committed to regional priorities and seen as mutual. China is seen in the Pacific as mutual economic partner. And for the US, the leaders, they realized that the ideational power trying to maintain these democratic values and governance system was admired, but they were concerned on the interference and conditions undermining the independence of the Pacific Island countries. And the generalized institutional approach was highly evaluated because of cooperation and partnership from all partners towards assisting challenges and sectoral development needs of the Pacific Island countries. The Pacific leaders did not approve of the U.S. Deliberate attempt to strategically deny China by incorporating interests of broader Asia-Pacific regional platforms and other informal alliances into its framework for the Pacific region. Because Pacific region, they would like to remain friends to all, and they see China as their economic partner. These are the findings and implications, but most of these findings and implications have been explained already. So pertaining to my 3 research questions, means, motivations, and the leader's perspective, these are the research findings of, preliminary findings of my research. And I think I should end here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justin. What I'm hearing you describe is it seems like in the Pacific there exists a tension between pragmatism on the one side and idealism on the other side. And I'm curious to hear more during our Q&A about how those compare and contrast and whether they're mutually exclusive or if the two can actually live together in one approach. Without further ado, I'd like to pass the floor to our next panelist, Sam, who is from Tonga and will be providing his presentation.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the Sasakawa Peace Foundation for organizing this program and this event for us, and to have this opportunity to share with you all my current research here in Rikyo University here in Japan. My focus is on improving governance and public services through social accountability, engaging citizens, civil society organizations, and the media in public management and administration. The motivations and behind this research is actually from my professional background in the public service. I've been with the government of Tonga for almost 14 years now, working in the Ministry of Internal Affairs in public policy and planning. And one of the major challenges for the Ministry of Internal Affairs, because it is the central agency for Tonga's domestic policy and administration. So we look after the affairs of and social and economic development of all the villages, all the islands, and regulating how best to improve our services for communities, and especially for poor people, marginalized communities and people. In order to overcome these challenges of having effective service delivery to people, I think my colleague from Tonga, Dr. Holla, had mentioned earlier, it's not really much of a problem of financing or a lack of funding, but rather a governance problem. A governance problem that stems from a variety of factors, but it also includes our gaps in our policies, the weakness in our institutional capacities, and also misallocation of our resources, our priorities mismatching from the actual realities of our communities. what we have at the national level might not be the actual priorities of our communities in the outer islands and the villages. So it's important to bridge the gap, and in order to improve our services. To bridge this gap, my focus area of my research is on social accountability and the significance of social accountability to bridging this gap. How best do we improve our services to people by improving our governance capacities, introducing the concept of social accountability. Social accountability came about only very recently in 2004 in the World Development Report in 2004. Much of the findings of the World Development Report, after almost 20 years of the global agenda focusing on development for developing countries, how best to improve economic and social and economic development around the world. And the major challenges for getting the right development to people was found within governance perspectives. Part of the challenges of why development does not actually improve the standard of living of people in developing countries is poor governance. So in 2004, a lot of initiatives was undertaken by the World Bank to create initiatives for social accountability. So where governance is weak and our institutional capacities are weak, social accountability provides an alternative form of accountability that could support to build the capacities of oversight institutions, monitoring public services, where citizens and civil society organizations and the media can help promote good governance and also promote effective service delivery. Social accountability is therefore an approach for building accountability that depends on civic engagement, where ordinary citizens and civil society organizations can participate directly in public affairs and policies. Social accountability mechanism includes civil society organizations who mobilize around demands for accountability, and also watchdog journalism who denounces government abuse of public resources and expose corruption. The significance of social accountability is that it aims to improve governance and advance development and empower citizens. It is an alternative mechanism of control of political power and monitoring public service delivery. It fills the gap of institutional weaknesses. It also provides an avenue for citizens' engagement in public management and policy. This picture below here is actually the first time the government supreme audit institutions engaged civil society organizations in tracking the government expenditure for the year 2022. So this is the first time that citizens engaged by the government to monitor, directly monitor how government is spending their money, how government is providing services to people. Advancing social accountability in the Pacific Island Forum acknowledges the importance of civil society engagement in the region, and for further information on that, you can find it in the Pacific Island Forum's engagement strategy. And also in the 4th Asia-Pacific Regional Meeting in 2021, it notes the importance of social accountability. What are the tools of social accountability? These are several tools, but these are just several tools that have been used around the world for social accountability. which includes community scorecards, public expenditure tracking surveys, participatory budgeting, citizens report card, social audit, information campaigns, public hearings, citizens charters, and community project monitoring. What we have done in recent years in Tonga is trying to improve our services to the people by engaging with people, especially for community development purposes. Only very recently we've engaged people in community participatory planning, where we allow people to develop their own development priorities from all the villages and all the islands. And those development priorities are then incorporated into our national development priorities. So rather than a top-down development planning that is always decided by the government at the national level, we've turned to a more of a bottom-up approach towards development by developing plans from communities and villages' priorities. In addition, we've also tried to introduce citizen scorecards in our public services very recently by having people do a customer service feedback on government services, see how satisfactory our services are. So it's a work in progress, but it's also a very important mechanism of social accountability. And it helps change the way we work, the way we think, and it also improves how we deliver our services, and especially much needed services and development projects to our people. The challenges to social accountability, firstly, is the rights cautious and guarantee of basic freedoms. This is very important. In order for social accountability to work, people must have the rights to engage in public affairs, especially basic constitutional rights, the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, the freedom to petition, freedom of assembly, the freedom of association. These are basic rights that need to be guaranteed constitutionally in order for people to have the ability to make complaints to the government, to share their ideas with government, how best to improve government services. Secondly is an open and responsive government, improving institutional capacity to engage with citizens and to respond to citizens' voices effectively. So we need mechanisms in place or platforms in place where citizens and civil society organizations are able to communicate directly with the government, and for government to be more open and responsive to citizens' voices. So not only do we encourage citizens' voice, but also we have mechanisms in place to empower citizens to be engaged in public administration and public policy. Thirdly is the active civil society. In order for social accountability to work, we must have an active civil society. In other words, we must have active citizens, because if we don't have active citizens, then there's no need for citizens to be engaged in public administration. So we need civil society and the media to be very active. We need our citizens and our media to be free, and also so they can properly monitor government services and public officials. Continuing on the challenges to social accountability is elite capture. One of the problems that I find in my research is the elite capture. Very often in the case of social accountability, civic associations and social movements who organize around demands for accountability, they're often overtaken by politicians with vested interest. So it becomes very political. So rather than a focus on building governance and improving government services, it becomes very political. You know, sometimes the opposition takes an opportunity of civic associations and social movements to engage citizens in order to advance their political popularity. Another challenge is that very often there is a lack of belief in our own agencies. Some of the people in our communities, our villages, in very small islands in the peripheries, have not really have faith in their own voices. They don't believe that their own actions can make a difference in our government, in our country. Probably because of historical legacies or because this is fairly new to us. So there's always that poor people in our countries very accustomed to delays in public services or delays in project implementation. So over the years they've become used to it. So they have very lack of belief in their own voices, to think that if they do this, if they voice out their concern, if they get engaged in public administration, will it make a difference? Will it change anything? So there is that lack of belief in people's agency. So this is just a way forward. Social accountability is a developing concept in the Pacific region. So as you see in the previous slides, only very recently that we've tried new initiatives of including citizens and civil society organizations in public administration and public policy. But most importantly is that for the way forward, public awareness and education is required to ensure both citizens and governments are on the same level of understanding about social accountability. Governments, regional agencies, donors, and civil society organizations must continue to improve accountability and integrity institutions. Building the existing institutions that we have, for example, the Ombudsman, anti-corruption commissions, the justice system, our public audits institutions. Of course, we need to continue to strengthen those institutions. But in order to complement the efforts of our existing institutions, and where our existing institutions have weaknesses, that is where social accountability becomes very significant. So social accountability can complement the works of our existing institution as providing oversight and monitoring of our government decisions, our public officials, and also our public service delivery. So at the same time, we must also take necessary steps to encourage citizens to become active participants in public affairs in order to ensure that public resources are not abused and public services are constantly improved. The advancement of social accountability is a crucial step towards good governance and deepening democracy in the Pacific region. There is a very important note that the more we engage citizens and the more there are oversight agencies and monitoring, the less and less that our resources are abused, and that is the way forward for bringing about good governance in the Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. I'm aware that we have about 10 minutes left for this session, with maybe 10 minutes of some wiggle room. I think what I'll do is I'll pose a question to each of our panelists, and then also if the audience has any questions, also provide that opportunity. But two very consequential issue areas and subject matters that I'm really grateful to hear these presentations, and Justin, on as to your presentation. Really appreciate, as I mentioned earlier, you kind of providing your findings around kind of the comparing and contrasting the approaches between the US and China in the Pacific region as it relates to more pragmatic approaches versus more ideals or like values-based approaches. And the question that I wanted to ask you on is if you if you could share with us any examples that you observed of actually those approaches in practice, for example, projects or specific case studies where that you can share with us that help illustrate for the rest of us, like, oh yes, now I understand like what it means to have a pragmatic approach, or what it means to have a more value-based or idealism approach.
Thank you. When you look at the approaches, the different strategies China was using, China also is using this strategy of economic statecraft. So this China is using this economic statecraft, and when you look at the practical, pragmatic benefits, you look at the Pacific region giving a lot of trade tariff relief, and Pacific region exports a lot of the commodities, which was one of the struggles in the past, but now they're having market access to China. And you look at the investment potentials that they have been having. China is coming into partnership with their respective states in the Pacific, and it's increasing its investments. And those investments also have spin-off benefits that local economies are growing, SMEs are coming up, and people are seeing some changes in their welfare level. And you also look at its grand strategy of BRI. China has been this is one of the pragmatic approach that sees that you look at the social sector infrastructure as well as transport infrastructure. A lot of this BRI program has assisted the majority of the Pacific Island countries who never had ports and bridges and road and all these things. It has been an hindrance to the economic prosperity for some time, but after engaging with China through this pragmatic approach, a lot of these infrastructures are put in place, and this is giving some sort of incentive for the regions to expand their economic potentials and to see changes in the social life as well. Some social infrastructures are also built, like health and education as well. So when you look at this, China is looking at giving these practical benefits, things that are needed by the regions at that time. And when you look at the humanitarian assistance and development cooperation packages, as well as support given by the U.S. to the Pacific Island region, it attaches that all must be compliant to the democratic principles, governance, and the values. The important factor that you would like to see happening from the governments in the Pacific is to ensure that whatever procurement processes and whatever systems must be seen to be compliant to these values and governance. So you see that the U.S. places a lot of attention towards maintaining these democratic principles and values and governance. All these things, it is seen to be compromised by Pacific governments when they deal with China, because most of these aspects, China deals directly with politicians, and some of these dealings are not accountable, transparent, and you see a lot of corruption allegations given by all our governments. So these are very critical areas that U.S. realizes that it is a breakdown of these values and systems. So it tries to ensure that whatever support that is given must be seen to be compliant with all these values, so that these democratic value systems are not eroded, but they are maintained and respected.
Thank you very much. And I think that the framework or way of thinking that you provide is helpful for us to look at the region in this way. But the kind of key themes that I hear in your remarks about economy and also about governance are also evident in Sam's talk, which I think is a nice segue to my question to Sam. You made an interesting point about, it's not necessarily about the money or the budget, it's about governance. And I think that that's a really interesting point, and one I'd like to hear more about is that relationship between how governance can inform economics, or whether economic problems are really governance problems. And so my question to you is, what might be, based on the suggestions that you provided, the role of technology when it comes to creating an open and responsive government? You mentioned citizen engagement, and it just got me thinking, like, if there are any examples that you've encountered and how your government might be leveraging technology in this space to be more responsive or to listen to the citizens better. Concepts like digital democracy come to mind when you're giving your presentation. So I just wanted to offer that as a question. And to round that out, I also wanted to ask you what might be your message be to especially youth or young people who may be disillusioned or who may not be motivated to engage in government or those kinds of processes, even things like simple as voting. What might be your message to them?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. I think last week I was here in one of the sessions. I think it was a presentation from the Solomon Islands, and it was about public health and the investment in public health. And it was perhaps a joke that the presenter made, but it's a very important statement. No, it was public health and disasters. That was the session. So much of the hospitals located in the coastal areas, in the low-lying areas in the Solomon Islands, sinking due to climate change and sea level rise. But only a few years ago, the Solomon Islands government invested millions in building a new sports stadium. And, looking at the priorities, where does the priority lie? And I think that is where citizens should have the voice. So not only that governments should make decisions on their own, but it should be in a consultative manner. What our development priorities look like in the future and how should it affect our well-being should be decided in a consultative manner. And that is where social accountability comes in. I think for much of like, back to your question, for much of that reality is the same in most Pacific Island countries. And that is why I mentioned that it's not just a financing issue, it's also a governance issue. So improving our governance systems would be very much critical for our development. And in terms of engaging citizens, but in the digital era that we're in, I think, for developed countries, they're much more matured in this area because they've built their integrity and accountability institutions for, almost 200 years now. But for the Pacific region, we're only recently, because most Pacific Island countries had just became independent about 20 years ago. And we are still on the process of developing our own integrity and accountability institutions in our governments. And only to add to that progress is how do we engage citizens in, fast-tracking our progress in integrity and accountability. But the value of technology has always been important. If I could just talk about the case of Tonga, only around in the late 1980s that we saw the emergence of new independent journalism media and a wider circulation of the print media in Tonga only in the late 1980s. Those developments in our media industry actually made a difference in our governance. It also paved the way for Tonga to become a democratic government in 2010, where we introduced our democratic reforms. But it also affected several improvements in our integrity institutions and our, in the 1980s, we established our audit institutions. So by that time, the Auditor General did not have the independence to make public audits against the government because it did not have its audit independence. Not until the 2000s. So when the new millennium came, the laws keep changing, and the laws keep changing for over 10 years in order to give our auditor the independence to monitor our public expenditure. But it's the same thing to our ombudsman. Only in the mid-1990s that we developed a public relations office was established under the Ministry of Justice. 10 years later, it became the Ombudsman Office. And only this year, we introduced our new Anti-Corruption Commission. So all this progress, they didn't just happen out of nowhere. They happened out of development in the media and also the interest of our citizens. So without the interest of our citizens in governance and without the interest of the media, we would not have seen this much development in a very short period of time. But in terms of encouraging youth to become active citizens, it's very important because the only thing that ties citizens to the state is our laws and our taxation system. Everyone has to abide by the laws and everyone has to pay taxes to the government. So it's important that everyone is engaged with the government. It's important that everybody has access to the government, whether it's the government services or information, or to hold the government accountable for their actions and their decisions. Yeah, I think it's important for youth regardless. Thank you.
Thank you both for your thoughtful responses, very insightful. I think we may have time for one question, if there is one. Otherwise, we may award the time to our next session. Any audience questions? Okay, that's all right, because actually we can allow the time to go to our next session. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin and Sam, for a wonderful presentation. And I think it's a very pressing issue in our countries. And thank you, William, for moderating this session. We'll just take a short 5 minutes break before we move to session 3. Session 3 is on traditional method of sustainability and looking into promotion of research and publication. Thank you. We'll meet back here at 15:30. Welcome back to our final session 3 on traditional method of sustainability and research and publication. Without further ado, I would like to invite Sakusa Naivo to make a presentation on traditional methodology of sustainability.
Bulubinaka, everyone. Can you hear me loud and clear? Thank you once again for the invitation and the opportunity to be here, the platform to share some of my knowledge from Fiji with you about traditional methodology, sustainable methodology of sustainability. Sorry, I came in late because I had an exam. It's the end of the semester now, so we've been having exams, so I had to rush from here, from school to here. I don't have time to put my PowerPoint up, but I'm going to give you highlights of the traditional methodology of sustainability in the Fijian context in Fiji, and I think this mainly, the idea also apply across the small Pacific Islands, because we are focused more on, we have so much of the ocean than the land in our area. So I'm going to focus, in terms of traditional methodology of sustainability, I'll talk about the traditional fishing methods. So there are different ways of fishing in the Pacific, and these fishing methods are not only fishing methods to catch fish, to eat them, but mainly the strategy of catching the fish involves the sustainable methodology to sustain the fish, sustain the environment, sustain the livelihood. And I have a very interesting picture here, but I couldn't throw it up at this time. One of the fishing methods known in Fiji, in an island called Mbenga. If you've been to Fiji, you can see Mbenga Island just across from Suva City. It's one of the big islands across opposite Nabua town. It's known as the Ngoli Kumbu. Ngoli Kumbu is simply means, in other words, in other Fijian words, it says Ngoli Nimbunyon. It simply means men or women coming together in big numbers, holding a stick each, and they form a big group in a particular area in the water. And they started off distancing themselves, and they started using the stick to hit the sand or hit the reef and start coming close together. This created some sort of disturbing noises in the ocean, and then the small fish gets to escape, but whatever fish of the size that can be catch, depending on the group sizes, that is the fish that they're gonna take out of the water. But the sustainability method or strategy of that fishing method is, in that village, they have several fishing spots. So if they are going to do that Ngoli Kumbu method in one particular fishing spot, they will never use it again for more than 1 or 2 years. They will go to the next fishing spot, because to give time to the sand and the reef that they were hitting while they were trying to bind together to close up all the fish, to recover, to rejuvenate, to regenerate. So after 1 or 2 years, then they'll come back to that spot. But within that year, or within that one or 2 years of not coming back to the same spot, there are other several spots where they can fish. So it's like a chain of a fishing spot. So they start here, and then the next time they move to another one, and they keep moving until they come back to that time. It goes around of a 1 year or 2 years time frame. So that's one of the example of the sustainable methodology of fishing methods. Another one is a tambu, and I think this is not taboo as a T-A-B-O-O, something that cannot be discussed or cannot be talked about, something very cultural that is only right in its sense. This tambu is T-A-B-U. Mainly, this is a general practice that is practiced across the whole of Fiji when a chief passed away or died. So a portion of the community fishing ground within this area is set aside as a no-take zone. You cannot fish in that fishing zone area. And then it will depend on the time period that the elders of the villages has allocated, maybe 3 months, 6 months, or 1 whole year. So these practices also allow time for fish to rejuvenate, for whatever marine organism or freshwater organism that is present within that fishing zone to regenerate and rejuvenate during that tambu period. And another one is the tuba moka. Tuba moka is mainly a rock formation that only catches big fish. So the formation of the rock depends on what kind or what sizes of fish you want to catch. So if the rocks are big and they are strategically laid down to catch big fish, so the opening of the rocks will be big. So if they are strategically to catch, and then they'll have tiny gaps in between, so when the big fish comes in and the small fish comes in, the tiny fish can escape in the tiny spaces between each rock. And when the tide goes down, it's only the big fish that is caught within that within the big rocks that are laid out. However, this traditional methodology, they still exist today, and they're still used today mainly by people who live in rural areas. Unlike for urban areas, it's not really very, much of a practice. People more like going to fish markets or supermarkets to get their fish and all. But the risk in this methodology is because the change in time is so rapid, and then generations of my generations and like those in the 50s, 40s, 30s, now they are also moving in terms of things that you can do to get fish so fast than the sustainable traditional methodology of catching fish that was in the traditional concept. So one of the limited, just briefly to explain more about my knowledge on this is, before I came to Japan, I worked as at the Ministry of Fijian Affairs, Itoki Affairs. So one of the units that we have is looking after the revitalization special unit. And government normally gives some sort of funding that we have to go, funding that we have to identify some of this knowledge, traditional knowledge that has been dying out in provinces. We get to know these by doing first a project called Cultural Mapping Project. The Cultural Mapping Project in Fiji, there are 14 provinces in Fiji. So through the Cultural Mapping Project, we got to find out what were the methodology or the sustainable methodology that were actually dying out in every village. So in other words, they were consultations. So we get to mark them on our map in different colors to denote what signifies which area that needs a lot of awareness, which areas that needs a lot of revitalization, and which area that is not practicing anything at all. So through the project of the revitalization unit, we have been able to carry out at least every quarter, financial quarter, a project each. Not only trying to revitalize it, not only trying to revitalize the knowledge, but at the same time, ensure that there's a monitoring system that it's not only revitalized, but people are practicing it again. So in this way, the traditional methodology of sustainability does not only helps with trying to sustain culture, the way of life, also sustain nature, at the same time provides livelihood for villagers and those that live within this area that has access to the ocean and to the river. So one of the, just some of the challenges that I would like to highlight, mainly one is the economic limitation and constraint nowadays. Due to financial, human, and technical resources, they're often limited, which hinder the limitation and the scaling of sustainable initiatives. As you understand the livelihood from the islands, anything that can make life easy nowadays people will move there. And since tourism is coming into our shores, they're also coming into small islands in the Lao groups and other small islands. There are tourist operators going into them. Not many people spend a lot of time in terms of doing the whole practice of sustainability methodology just to catch fish. But they'll prefer to go to some latest fishing methodology. And not only that, the crafting becomes the sale of the day. So instead of fishing, they'll move to crafting to get money from tourism. And this money can are used to get the latest fishing lines or the fishing methodology, which has also some negative impact on the environment, unlike the traditional sustainability methodology that we also like to revive at the same time. And also the short focus project. People are always moving. There's no project that's sustaining people in the same community, in the same place to make them stay there for a long duration of period. If a job opportunity comes up, the awareness is done to the people that were there at that time, and then they get a job offer, they leave the village. So the knowledge becomes missing. So as the revitalization chain is not maintained. So mainly the way forward is government policies by government with lots of research and also consultancy, and also if the special revitalization unit can be given a little bit more budget to sustain their project, and may it not be only a short-term project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kyusa. Indeed, a very interesting topic. You may come and have a seat. We'll move on to the next presenter, Keone Williams, Information and Publication Officer from East West Center. He will talk about on promotion of research, data sharing, and publication with the East West Center. Thank you.
Test. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Keone Williams. I am the Information and Publications Officer at the Pacific Islands Development Program at the East-West Center. The Pacific Islands Development Program is a program of the East-West Center that is dedicated to serving the people and nations of the Pacific through capacity building, interchange among regional leaders, and policy-relevant research. I'm here to convince everyone of the significance of publishing. I am speaking to our online audience, but also to our audience here of emerging leaders, and I'm trying to communicate the importance of publishing their work to a wider audience, because contemporarily, especially audiences outside of the Pacific, are very keen to hear what Pacific voices are saying, especially at this time with the challenges we're facing in this world. This is an illustration from a previous presentation. So I'm gonna highlight just a few things since I'm giving a more abridged version of this presentation. I'm gonna focus on point 2, a regional news roundup, which is kind of our flagship digital product at PIDP. It's a regional news roundup of Pacific Islands news. And then I'll also focus on item 5, additional features, prominently Visions and Voices, which is our quarterly publication that I'm gonna talk a little bit about, and then encourage submissions from everyone here on stage and all of those of you who may be listening now or watching at a later point. Photoed there is former Hawaii Governor John Waihee. He was the first Native Hawaiian governor. He was the governor of Hawaii. But he's standing there at the launch, or the relaunch, of the Pacific Islands Report, which happened this year in May. The Pacific Islands Report for more than 20 years had been serving the region since 1997 as a one-stop kind of go-to place for curated news about the Pacific Islands region. We had a hiatus for a few years, but we have just brought it back, and I'm really excited to be able to share it with you all. And I also want to thank Sasakawa Peace Foundation for the opportunity to allow me to share it with you folks. As I mentioned, we've been around for more than 20 years, and we're bringing it back now. This is what our site looked like in 2016. When it first launched in 1997, it was actually quite cutting edge, that the Pacific Islands Report was a website. And you'd click on each link, and it would give you the full text of each article. So what it provides now is a repository, hopefully if we can get our archive up, a repository of the Pacific Island region's news across all the different subregions for every single day for more than 20 years. So to researchers as well, this may be a useful source for you in the future. This is our regional news roundup. As I mentioned, it's our what the Pacific Islands Report has been known as for more than 20 years. It is quite simply a weekly list of top news headlines organized by the thematic areas of the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent, which, as we know, is a strategic document endorsed by Pacific heads of state in 2022. I'm just going to give a brief illustration of how the report actually looks in practice. This is just an example of an email that you'll get. There's 4 sections like this, and it's the week's latest headline under that thematic area. So the thematic area of people-centered development will include headlines that encompass health, education, human rights, cultural heritage. And they're organized there. You can click through to drive traffic directly to the original sources, and you can pull up an article, such as this one, on Japan helps Samoa with Science Academy. And it's released every Friday in most of the Pacific and Asia. And it is available as an email, and it's also available as a LinkedIn newsletter. I'm sharing this as our audience because not only do I want to articulate to everyone listening that we have a pretty broad audience of Pacific stakeholders and decision makers across government, business, civil society, and news media, but I also share this to our prospective contributors to our publications to understand who your publication will be seen by and who you're speaking to when you publish through PIDP. This is our non-Pacific audience. This is a non-exhaustive list of logos that I was able to Google in a short matter of time, but this is just to illustrate that a large part of our non-Pacific audience is US-based, but not only just US-based. We proactively reach out and get key decision makers to sign up for our listserv and our newsletters so that when we're able to amplify Pacific voices, we're ensuring that these people have direct access. So when we're able to publish young Pacific voices or any voice that's passionate about the Pacific Islands, we help to ensure that it's delivered to email inboxes of people who are really interested in hearing what the Pacific has to say. This is just a bit about growth. This is just to articulate. There's a lot of people reading, and so to our prospective contributors, please know that this is the audience we want to read your work. I'm going to skip through this and talk about Visions and Voices. So Visions and Voices is what is new to the Pacific Islands Report. It is a Pacific-focused quarterly periodical that features a collection of concise essays, articles, and commentary by contributing authors. I think the main point to communicate is that Visions and Voices was established to amplify the voices that are from the Pacific and also passionate about Pacific Islands issues. This is to address a pretty critical need that we've observed of people outside of the Pacific region wanting to hear more and learn more about what the Pacific has to say. And so Visions and Voices is published on the Pacific Islands Report website. It's a quarterly periodical, and our first quarter issue included 14 pieces. All 14 of those pieces covered all thematic areas of the 2050 strategy, as I'll illustrate on another slide. Our authors were a mix of Pacific Islanders and non-Pacific contributing authors, and they included academics, professionals, and students. This is an illustration of our front page. So our general submission guidelines is we accept submissions around 800 to 1,200 words. This is a great stepping stone, especially for graduate students or emerging professionals who want to reach a wider audience quicker, because this may be considered a good stepping stone between kind of a class paper, more academic paper for your course, and a peer-reviewed publication, which can take 1 to 2 years. So what we're trying to do is help get out ideas and get out discourse and conversation on issues related to the Pacific Islands in a more timely manner and shorter and concise. As we've observed, these days people are reading less and less, so we want to keep it nice and short. Our focus is on a general audience. So these are all Pacific Islands related topics. We have 4 quarterly deadlines evenly spread out throughout the year. So if you can't hit one of them, there's always going to be another one not too far into the future. And everything can be done online at pireport.org/submissions. This image here is one of our author spotlights of Joanna Guzman, who's regional advisor at SPC. She submitted a very interesting piece I encourage you to read on our website about Pacific Island country submissions to the International Court of Justice climate change opinion. Right, these are some use cases of contributions that we receive. So academics and researchers submit concise summaries of denser research reports to allow kind of their longer theses to reach a wider audience, people who may not have access to the academic databases or repositories that are common in academic settings. Students and interns submit class papers that allow those class papers to extend their life past that course. So it's not just sitting in a folder at the end of your semester, you're allowing it to generate discussion and conversation. And then professionals and community members can submit essays on articles and topics of interest. This is an illustration of some of the articles that we published in our first issue. You'll notice there is a piece on the Pacific Islands and Japan, promoting the rule of law and justice in a free and open Indo-Pacific. There's also pieces on the repatriation of ancestral remains from Germany to the Pacific. It even covered more security issues like closing the strategy execution gap in the Pacific, so national security planning, and even discussing government engagement, the next chapter in PNG's financial inclusion story, which relates to economics. For our prospective contributors and authors, this is what your piece looks like on our website when it's published. It's not only accessible online, but it's also accessible as a PDF so that it can be printed and distributed to a wider audience who may want hard copies. Each quarter, in conjunction with our publication of our issue, our quarterly issue, we convene a webinar where we feature our Visions and Voices authors. This is important for several reasons. The first being, in the Pacific Islands region, our ancestral ways of transmitting knowledge was verbal. It was through spoken word. Traditionally, if you look at our cultures, we did not write things down. We had conversations. And so this is one opportunity to supplement the written publication of our ideas with conversation, and then the way that we're used to transmitting knowledge and wisdom in our region. And this is just an illustration of people on LinkedIn sharing some of the stories that we posted, and I just want to illustrate the opportunity for allowing your voice to generate discussion throughout the world on these really important topics. So this example is Alisa Papainu from Tuvalu wrote on the 2023 revised constitution for Tuvalu. She's from Tuvalu, and she's been a lawyer for several years, and she also, I believe, works for SPC. And so, I mean, these are people that are really well placed to write these pieces and have the context and the experience to do that. And I just wanted to drive home the point that the world really wants to hear more from our region, and I'm excited to help facilitate that. These are some additional features. But this is a QR code that anyone can scan if you're interested in subscribing to our Pacific Islands report. Also, if you're interested in contributing your piece to Visions and Voices, you can also, this will take you to the website, and from the website, you can navigate there. Also, it's very simple, just on Google, you can type in PIDP, Visions and Voices, and it'll take you to our submission guidelines. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate, especially the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. Halo.
Thank you, William, for sharing and encouraging our young practitioners to publish more. We're a bit behind time. However, we'll take a few questions as part of panel discussion, and we'll also have time after this session as well to speak openly. So my first question is in regards to the traditional knowledge that Sakusa has presented. So we talk a lot about sustainability, and one of the ways of sustainability is traditional knowledge, bringing back traditional knowledge, and a very vast amount is lost due to globalization, climate issues, changes as well. My question is, how can these matters be sustained? Do you think traditional knowledge and skills should be implemented into our education system rather than more be at a communal level? And how can research and publication enhance sustainability of traditional knowledge in the context of Fiji?
Thank you very much for that question. Traditional knowledge is very much important in our lives. We get to understand or see the value of it once one of our machines that we bought from the furniture shop is not working. So we go back to basics. And traditional knowledge is very vast because it covers the whole area of our livelihood, our living in the Pacific. So you talk about what I said today was fishing method. There's also food preservation. There's also, or voyaging. Our ancestors were voyagers, so navigation and all that. But I think it's very important that that we can innovate. That social innovation is very important. That's why we come to Japan to study. We study about Southern Asia, and also we study about other countries as well. And because things are always changing. Climate change is real. That's the real battle. Globalization is real. People will make their own choices of the lifestyle they want to live in. And also, but the important thing is, if we have to sustain, there are ways to get the message across. Firstly is having it in our curriculum, in our education system, because in our curriculum, our education system in the Pacific is mainly overseas kind of curriculum. Very less of us is indulged into our curriculum. We learn more about American, United Kingdom ways of living, and then when we come to Japan, then we realize how Japan maintains the basic, even though they have modernization. So those are social innovation. We can go back home. So the work lies with us, those who have the opportunity to come and study and go back to our country to serve. Do we just not serve on what is existing already at home, or we go back home and build a new thing? The idea we get from here with what is already at home, what can we merge together to see the form, to make sure that sustainability is also in the form of that innovation. Not only have the opportunity to come study here overseas, come and study in Japan, and after go back home for the salary and be relaxed, because that is also the nature of what we're seeing happening home. Because there's been a lot of programs, cross-cultural programs, but there's been less innovation. So it lies with us, those that have been exposed to this kind of arena, to this kind of development, and what we know best that is good, suitable for back at home that we can do that will better our lives, at the same time have the knowledge that we don't want to lose those values. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sakisa. I totally agree with this because one thing I even realized coming into Japan and going in a supermarket or even in a traditional shop is how they preserve food, which we used to do. I remember my parents used to do a lot of preservation of food. But as going on to generations, we are losing that, and it's also a challenge to our food security system as well. You also made a point where you said Japan has modernized, but also they have maintained their traditional knowledge and culture so much intact as well. And this is something that is a very good learning platform. And also looking at our education system, I think I've even talked about last week on education, is Japan's education system at the beginning teaches you how to live in a society, how to fit in a society. Whereas our education system is much more very modernized and more of a globalization level. So I think this needs to be included into our education system, is that we need to know how to be able to live in a society. That's what is learning, that's what is education is teaching us here in Japan. And another way I think is that we lack we have a lot of data. We go back with a lot of data. So it's either our implementation challenges with our governance and the policy, or it's just, like you said, is you get a qualification and go back, it's just for your paycheck, increase in your paycheck, and you just really don't want to do anything. But here, I think as a researcher, and I think we all at the Pacific Island people will face the similar situation, is that as a researcher, we want to make a difference with our findings. And one is that the challenges is that we are not heard about it. And I think one of the way is publication. You publish your data, you publish your research, somebody is going to pick it up and try and influence, maybe at the governance level, maybe a donor agency will look into it and try and reach to you and try and see how they can fit those initiatives in it as well. And that's the reason why I invited Williams to join, to encourage the young practitioners to be part of more research and publication. Just do not sit with your research, your findings, go out, make it visible. My question to Williams is, when it comes to publication, does it go through peer review system, if any? And apart from receiving the publication, how does East West Center use the Voice of the Pacific for development projects or further research?
Thank you for your question. To your first part, we do have an internal two-tiered system of review for visions and voices. It is not necessarily peer-reviewed in the academic sense. However, we do have peer-reviewed publications within the East-West Center, and if that's something that authors or contributors are interested in doing, I'd be happy to help connect them, because we do have publications that are peer-reviewed and indexed, and are also on the shorter length. So this is within the 4,000 to 8,000 word range pieces that can have works cited, and then there's opportunities for longer reports. So, but yes, that's answer to your first question. And then the second question was, how do we use the Pacific Voices to, you say, inform development partners? Is that? Yeah. So our role is amplifying, and so the East-West Center as a 501c3 nonprofit organization can't lobby the government technically due to our tax status. However, what we do is we educate and we inform, and what we do, the way that we do that is that we ensure that decision makers are receiving our email newsletter. So once we're able to collect these articles, we can share all of them with them, and our hope is that it will help to educate and to inform the work that they do.
Thank you so much. So we know that we always lack data in the Pacific, more of a scientific or evidence-based data. I think this is a platform that we can start working on with our young practitioners. Is there any questions from the panel or the audience?
Just a question for Zach. In terms of traditional knowledge, how much research do you think has gone into the impacts of climate change in our traditional knowledge? I think only about 4 years ago, we began to publish traditional knowledge in Tonga in terms of disaster management and disaster preparedness. So we've published a manual of by collecting traditional knowledge from elders in the villages and across the islands. But most of these knowledge have, they're affected by climate change. For example, planting sweet potatoes in Tonga usually is during the crescent moon. During the crescent moon and on the Sunday of Easter. On the Sunday of Easter every year is the day that we plant sweet potatoes, because out of our historical practice, every year we do receive a fair bit amount of rainfall during that night. So that is the reason why. But about the last 5 years, that pattern has changed. We planted on the crescent moon and on the Sunday of the Easter, but there was no rain. So the climate patterns has changed, and it has affected our traditional knowledge. So in terms of that, I would like to know more about how much research in the Pacific has gone into the impacts of climate change and our traditional knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Toko. In terms of the cultural knowledge research, also together with climate change, on my knowledge, when I was with the Fijian Affairs Ministry, there has been a lot of scholars that have been given opportunity to study not only in overseas, but especially at USP on the climate change program. But on the publishing of knowledge of preparedness and also the methodology of sustainability, in my understanding about the Fijian context, the whole of Fiji provinces sustainable methodology has been published, and it's kept with the Ministry of Fijian Affairs. But every Fijian has the right to access that information if they go to Fijian Affairs. So one of the mandate of the Ministry of Fijian Affairs is to protect and safeguard the itoke, or the Fijian traditional knowledge and custom. So when in partnership with UN, they did the cultural mapping project. The cultural mapping project really covers the 14 provinces of Fiji and the 1,663 villages. So this project aims to collect every data right from when a child is born, every customary, every customs that is involved in when a child is born, right up till when the child is big, into manhood, until they die, even when ladies married off and all that. And also the different kind of customs that is involved, birth, marriage, death, and also the different kind of ways of their lifestyle from before Christianity came in, when Christianity came to our shores, or in these modern days. So all that is published. But the thing is, one of the things that I notice, we don't have our people liking to come to the library to read this research. That's where the challenges is. Scholars are researching, scholars are publishing, they are getting their checkbox ticked, but it's the impact for the people that have to read. There's no passion for people to read and to get this knowledge. So that's where the challenge is. People in the Pacific Islands, or maybe in Fiji, It can be relevant to the other Pacific Islands too. Talanoa, or having stories, talking about stories is more interesting than having to read a book. You open a book, you'll sleep. But we have to open the book and force the knowledge into our minds, because if you're in school, you need that mark, you need to graduate, so you have to force that knowledge in your head. But other than that, I, for one, I don't like books. I don't like reading. But we have to do it when you're offered an opportunity. And that's the big challenge in Fiji. So the question is, what can be the motivation? What can inspire them to go into books more than just believing in a Talanoa session? Because anyone can come up with any story. But as for research, there's a source, there's a credibility in there. So yeah, thank you. I hope that have answered the question. Thank you.
Interesting indeed. Thank you very much. I think we are almost over the time, so we can continue with our discussions after, maybe at the conclusion of the session. And yeah, the question remains is how. We have so much. The question still remains how we're going to do it, and something that we need to look into it is whether make it more online, the data. Make it more online, because now with the technology, people just want to sit back at their home and read rather than going to the library or to the publication source. Anyways, I would just like to invite Dr. Fuka just to give final, as a graduate from Japan, who's now has come back as a practitioner, to just give a word of remarks based on the overall session, and also encourage more Pacific Island people to come in to do research and do publication as well. So over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I know it's been too long and nobody wants to sit for that long. My job is to conclude the session, and this is the Second Pacific Island Young Professional Forum for envisioning the future. So I would just like to touch on 3 points. So the first point is a round of applause to our lovely panelists and from the Pacific, and also to our audience for being an amazing, and thank you very much for your patience. Thank you. The second part is on behalf of my fellow Pacific colleagues, and to whoever is listening, thank you very much to the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, and to all those who have been working behind the scene. Amalo Aupito and arigatou gozaimasu for making this happen, and using this important and crucial platform for us in the smaller islands to share our experiences, our knowledges, and hopefully looking for solutions so we can take it back home for improvement of our, not only at the individual level, right up to the community, but the country as a whole. Thank you. The third point is, in the last few days, it has been an amazing and fantastic days. Everyone bringing to this platform ranges of the challenges or providing solutions on how we can do better back home, and how we can reach out to the bigger nations for support. And thank you very much, Japan, for that. The question is, going back to the title of this program, is what do we want our future to look like? And that is our job today, is how can we transform our world into a more sustainable world, by making sure that we meet our current needs, but at the same time not to compromise the chances of our future generations in meeting their needs. So whether it could be a political agenda, or from the health sector, or from the socioeconomic regions, or from a boy and a girl in the village, we have to look at it in a more holistic approach, ecological approach, multi-faceted and multi-level, and increase platforms to stretch out to the horizon and reaching out to the bigger nation to help us bridge that gap, and in order for us to be in the same level so we can develop a more sustainable and a better future for our generation. And with that, I declare this session closed. Malo Obidon, arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Fuka. Thank you for all of you that have joined today. This officially ends our session. And thanks for your contribution, and congratulations those who will be graduating soon. And we'll see you around as practitioners coming back here. Thank you.